I'd like to call this meeting of the Clay County Commission to order. We will start with our invocation this evening. We have Pastor Roger Wilson with us. Pastor, if you'd like to come forward and start whenever you are ready.
All right, well, good evening. I'm Roger Wilson, and I'm a pastor at Vineyard Church, just south of Smithville. We are a large family church. Our aim and focus is creating unique faith experiences for families and their children. And so it's a pleasure to be here tonight. By the way, I'm a lifetime resident of Clay County. For over a half century, have spent my life in Clay County. Graduate of Winnetonka High School. And so just to those members here, thank you for your service. Thank you for your leadership. We're so grateful for you. But would y'all join me in a word of prayer this evening? So, God, we come before you today with grateful hearts. We acknowledge your presence among us as we gather for this important meeting, and we recognize the responsibilities that are placed on these leaders that are here and that they're significant. And we ask for your guidance and wisdom, that it would rest upon each individual person present here, Lord. We seek your hand as we strive to serve the diverse community that we're part of here in Clay County. It's a place filled with many walks of life, many backgrounds and perspectives. And as decisions are made, that, Lord, we pray that it would affect those lives in this county and bring a spirit of unity, of understanding, and of compassion, Lord. God, may this room be filled with a spirit of peace that surpasses the differences that we may have. Give us the humility to listen well, the courage to speak truth, Lord, the grace to disagree with love if necessary. And in these moments of discussion, Lord, help us to remember the shared ideals that unite us as neighbors and as fellow citizens and as individuals who are all committed to the common good. So, Lord, guide these leaders that are gathered here today, Lord, give them wisdom that they can pursue justice and fairness and equity for all. And remind us of the responsibility that we bear for the welfare of the most vulnerable among us, God. And may our decisions reflect your heart and your mercy and your righteousness. Lord, and though we all come from different faiths and different backgrounds and perspectives, Lord, may we find common ground in our desire to see this community flourish, Lord. Let this time of governing be marked by integrity and wisdom and a deep commitment to the values that sustain our community and our county, Lord. So, Lord, in humility, we recognize that none of us can do this alone. And we ask for your strength and for your peace to guide us through the complexities of leadership. And we ask that all of this in your precious name, knowing that you hear us and that you care for us. Amen.
Thank you. Please remain standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte.
Here.
Commissioner Withington.
Here.
Commissioner Lawson.
Here.
Commissioner Wagner.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Next is approval of our agenda. Is there a motion related to this evening's agenda? Commissioner Johnson, hold on a moment. There we go. Thank you.
Move to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion for the approval of this evening's agenda as published. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
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 0.
Next item on our agenda are public comments. Is there any member of the public who would care to comment on any issue? If you do, as you come forward, I would like to remind anyone who would like to make comment to make sure that the green light is on the microphone. Speak clearly into the microphone, identify yourself, and then proceed with your remarks to the commission. Go right ahead.
Are there any rules for the public comments that I should be aware of, or it's just open comment?
By the way, could you speak a little bit more loudly, just so we can hear you better? That's great. Thank you.
Perfect. So I am returning. I was here earlier this year, I guess following the presentation of the 5-year road plan. I was here with my neighbors to discuss with you the corridor of roads that we all live on in this area. It's a 1-mile stretch, or what I learned from the road presentation, commonly referred to as 2 lane miles. And so while I brought this forward at that time, I thought I should now come back and present to you, though you probably know, and present to the public that that road has been surface upgraded. The chip and seal has been done. And I'll tell you, when it's dry like it is now, it is a blessing to be able to drive down with 0 dust. So just to reflect a little bit further on this and my appreciation to each of you, you know, I came here that day hearing from my neighbors of 20 plus years of promises made, but promises not followed through on. So while I came here energetic that you would take in what we were asking, you know, if I fell back to the past, I thought, we may walk away with the same result. But I'm thankful that day that you heard us out, all right? And I don't mean that you just sat there and we spoke and you generally responded, but you actively listened and you actively participated in the discussion, right? Calling on various groups to provide you insight, and that gave us hope of something that could be done differently. And then fast forward, you know, I remember is it Diana presented to you within the budget where there was space to find funds for the road in 2024 verse 2025, which were planned, and that again generated some hope. We knew and understood, as you did, that there were some complexities in this, but there was that hope there that this would happen. And so now here we are months later, and I'm returning to thank you all for seeing that through and for getting this road surface updated. So certainly appreciate that. Specifically, I do want to thank Joanne Lawson for her support. You know, the 3 things that come to mind when I reflect on her support. One is responsiveness. Any time that I inquired about the topic, even from the very first day that I asked people to come and look at the road, she was responsive in that. 2, persistence. She certainly stayed with it and stayed with those communications with myself and the neighbors around us. And then 3rd, communicating with candor. And I think, you know, as a Clay County resident, I appreciate that we just have honest discussion, dialogue on these sort of things where it's not a lot of games being played, but here are the facts and let's work together on this. So with that, I'll end my comments just with a thank you all one more time.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Jim Godwin. Thanks.
Okay. I thought he might have said that at the beginning. I hadn't caught it. Thank you for catching that. Thank you very much for your comment. It's always gratifying to hear positive comments, and we appreciate that. And now, obviously, staff is a very big part of what we're able to handle in this county. Are there any other citizens wishing to come forward and express any views to the commission? Seeing none. That brings us to our consent agenda. Administrator?
The consent agenda allows the commission to act upon items considered to be routine and approved in one motion. These may include items that have been reviewed by the commission in a prior session. There will be no separate discussion unless a commissioner requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. There are 12 items on this evening's consent agenda. The first item for consideration is approval of the commission meeting minutes from September 5th and September 12th. Resolution 2024-261 is approving invoice payments for the period of September 7th through September 13th in the amount of $833,225.31 for 365 invoices. Resolution 2024-260 is approving a lease agreement for a 2024 John Deere skid steer for the Parks Department from Heritage Tractors. Resolution 2024-263 is approving capital project encumbrance request and sales agreement for the installation of the newly purchased generator and removal of the old generator at the Schrader Building. 2024 Ordinance 26 is approving the adoption of the Project Procedure Manual, Design Criteria Manual, Technical Specifications Manual, and the Erosion and Sediment Control Manual effective October 1st, 2024. Resolution 2024-266 is approving the 2025 grant acceptance with the Missouri Department of Transportation for the Dedicated Impaired Driving Enforcement Program. Resolution 2024-267 is approving the 2024-2025 grant acceptance with the Missouri Department of Transportation for the Dedicated Hazardous Moving Violations Program. Resolution 2024-268 is approving the 2024-2025 grant acceptance with the Missouri Department of Transportation for the Impaired Driving Countermeasures Program. Resolution 2024-269 is approving the 2024-2025 grant acceptance with the Missouri Department of Transportation for the Hazardous Moving Violations Program. Resolution 2024-270 is approving the 2024-2025 grant acceptance with the Missouri Department of Transportation for the Youth Alcohol Enforcement Program. Resolution 2024-271, which is approving the 2024-2025 grant acceptance with the Missouri Department of Transportation for the Distracted Driving Enforcement Program. And Resolution 2024-273, approving agreement between the Clay County, Missouri and the Missouri Department of Mental Health to provide services in the detention center.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Move to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Motion has been made for the approval of this evening's consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner? Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Next on our agenda is the regular agenda items. Next are the regular agenda items. First on that list is 2024-264. Administrator?
Resolution 2024-264 is a consideration of a request for waiver of fees, interest, penalties, and taxes due to a county error by William and Karen Allen. And I believe the applicant is supposed to be here, but I don't see them. Last conversation we had, we were anticipating that the applicant would be here this evening.
Okay. Do we know whether they might be in the hallway or anything? If they're both here? Or? There's nobody else. Nobody else in the hallway? But we did anticipate, did they say that they would be here for this?
My understanding from staff is yes, that we did anticipate that Mr. Allen was going to be here this evening.
Might I suggest if the commission is okay with this, since they had planned to be here, there may be some unforeseen delay in their arrival here. I hate to work on these items without the citizen being present and being able to speak for themselves. Would it, I was wondering if we could just move this to the last item on the agenda, take the other two agenda items, and then give the citizens time to be able to be here and make their case. Can I do that just by consent of the commission, or do we need a vote?
I think it can just be held if that's your preference.
Excuse me?
You can just hold it and to see if they show up.
Okay. If there's no objection from the commission, we will move to the other two items and then return to this first item. So that means we will now go take up 2024-262, Administrator.
Resolution 2024-262 is approving invoice payments for the Clay County Prosecutor's Office from September 7th through September 13th in the amount of $950.60, and there are 3 invoices.
Commissioner Johnson.
Move to approve 2024-262.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2024-262. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner? Commissioner Thompson?
I recuse myself.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington? Yes. Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Motion passes 5 in favor, 1 recusal.
Next on the agenda is 2024-265. Administrator.
Resolution 2024-265 is approving ARPA project authorization and a developer agreement with water services at Crows Creek Campground with Public Water Supply District Number 9. Interim Parks Director Davis is here to provide information to the Commission about this project.
Proceed.
Interim Parks Director John Davis. Parks Department engaged in a study to develop a plan to abandon the 2 water lines that are running underneath the lake that have been causing us problems for several years, which is the purple line up here and the red line over here. Part of that is tonight you have an agreement with Public Water District Number 9 out of Smithville. They're willing to run a water line to feed us from their starting point would be at E and Collins Road and to this point, which is the entrance or basically the maintenance shop area of Crows Creek Campground. So tonight that developer's agreement with them would cost $244,450. And then after when this is complete, we will have a second phase of this where we are, by the end of next month, have more construction bids come in where we will actually abandon this line and our campgrounds will connect into that meter. So, any questions?
I assume that there is, that we have some idea of what it would cost us to go the other direction, which I have to think is going to be much more expensive and problematic.
Estimated is about $200,000 to connect in because we have to abandon these lines, which abandoning means they have to be pumped with concrete to fill them so they're blocked off, and then we have to have some pressure relief valves that'll be upgraded and some that will be added.
Well, and if I could interject,
Yes.
part of the preliminary engineering study was to look at all the options, all the alternatives. And so there were different proposals that were looked at on how to get water to this particular service, including replacing the existing line under the lake. And this was the recommendation by the engineering firm and the most efficient and cost-effective of the options.
That was my understanding. I just wanted to revisit and make sure that the public who was watching understood that all the options had been examined and this was the most cost-effective way to provide the water service. What is, and I apologize if I didn't quite catch it when you were speaking, what is the projected date for the completion of the project?
I don't have that yet, so that's
No, that's
up to the Water District to get it on their schedule, so hopefully soon.
All right. No, I realize that some of those things, it's much art as science, and you can't control many of the factors involved. Commissioner Wagner, I think you were seeking recognition.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm no engineer, and I will admit that. But I note that what we intend to abandon are 10 and 8-inch mains and replacing them, if I'm reading this right, with 3 and 4-inch mains. And I grant that getting them, or not having to dig into the lake and the mud of the lake is desirable, but my question is just really about overall capacity over time. And do we expect those smaller mains to handle whatever development may occur in this area, in this corridor, or is that an issue?
This is what the engineers have recommended, so I don't have an answer for that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Is that new water line, is that going under private property?
I don't know if it's going over right away or what they're doing. That's kind of on the Water District. This is I've put this line in there. That's just a general area of where it's going, so they might it might be going along the roadway and all that, so.
Well, if that was going under private property, would we need their permission to do that?
That's on the water district. That's their line.
Okay.
Commissioner Lawson?
So it is totally approved by the water district, right?
Yes.
So if there were right-of-ways, they probably already got them and all. And I don't think we really need to worry about growth, so to speak. It's not like they're ever going to put a housing addition up there unless the rules really change. But it'll be pretty much static. What we have is what we have, right?
Right.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I kind of share Commissioner Wagner's thoughts on the capacity, and again, I am about as far as you can get from an engineer. Yeah, it does kind of raise a question in my mind, but I will leave it at that because I don't have the background to necessarily analyze it, but it is something that causes me pause. Commissioner Carpenter.
Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, I mean, along those lines, so, we spent $115,000 on a study. I'm presuming the recommendations came out of the study. Is that our understanding?
Yes.
So I too will declare not an engineer. I guess my hope is that the $115,000 we paid to Burns and Mack for the study on this, that they considered such things and that they got it right. If not, that would be unfortunate. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Yeah.
Okay. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, is there a motion on 2024-265? Commissioner Johnson.
Motion approved 2024-265.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2024-265. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner? Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
That brings us back to the first item on the regular agenda this evening that we had set aside. That is 2024-264. Administrator.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm here for the next topic under discussion.
I was going to go ahead and just get all the regular agenda stuff handled at one time, then come back to the next item.
Right.
Unless the commission would like to give more time to the citizen, to the citizens that are possibly going to be here. We can certainly do that if it's the will of the commission. I can go either way.
Have we heard from them at all?
The administrator, I think, was saying that they had conversations that expressed that they would be here. Is it possible for anyone to maybe call them from staff and see if they are on their way?
We will have staff in the back make a quick contact, and see if we can find out a status.
That being the case, why don't we go ahead and just go to our first discussion item? Like I say, I'm anxious to give a citizen the maximum amount of opportunity to speak on their behalf, especially on an issue like this. So unless there's an objection from the commission, I think we'll go ahead and do the first discussion item, and then we will, when the citizens arrive, should they arrive, we'll go ahead and take them up at the earliest opportunity. Proceed.
All right, thank you. So we're on to the first discussion item this evening for the commission's consideration, and that is information about establishing the property tax mill levy for 2024. So what I'd like to do is be able to advance slides. So I want to start out a little bit with regard to sort of the historical information about the assessed valuation of the county. And so what this chart provides to you is the historical aspects of what the assessed valuation has been since 2012. Now, it is important to remember that 2024 is not a reassessment year. And so what you see here is a difference between 2023 and 2024, and so there is a slight increase. But as you can see, the county is continuing to grow and has over many years. This particular chart will give you more of a breakdown and a comparison of the current 2024 information that we've received and the prior year, 2023. So you can see from real estate, it is $5.4 billion, whereas in the prior year of 2023, it was a $5.3 billion. So there's been an increase of about 1.4% or $144 million due to new construction. Then we have personal property that saw also a slight increase of less than 1% in assessed valuation. Our railroad and utilities actually saw a reduction in their assessed valuation of a negative 3.5%. So the total current evaluation for the county from 2023 to 2024 is a slight increase of 1.1%, going from $6.8 to $6.9 billion. We also do a TIF adjustment, and so what that is telling us is that we actually have TIFs that are basically coming to conclusion, and they're coming back on the tax rolls in full value. So our adjusted value in 2024 is $6.6, almost $6.7 billion compared to $6.5 billion in 2023. So basically, we're seeing a 2.1% increase in the county's assessed valuation. Now, as many of you know, when setting the mill levy, there are many things that we have to take into consideration to be in compliance with state statute and the Hancock Law with regard to how we set the mill levy. So what this information provides to you is what is the current mill levy, what is the maximum ceiling rate that is allowed under the formula, under state law for 2024, what that rate change is, what that percentage change is, and what is the revenue in 2024, and what is the estimated revenue that would come in at the ceiling rate, and what that change in dollar is. So I'll just kind of walk you through each one of our funds. So the county currently has two separate mill levies for the county operations. The first is the general fund mill levy, which current rate is 0.0250 mills per 100 assessed valuation. The 2024 ceiling rate is 0.0252. So it is a rate change of 0.0002, or basically a 0.8% increase in the mill rate. The revenues in 2024, based on our current mill rate of 0.025, is basically $1.6 million. If the commission approves the general fund mill rate at the ceiling rate, that would generate in 2025 general fund revenue of almost $1.7 million. So comparing revenue, that's an increase of $49,000 in the general property tax, which is about a 3% increase. We also have our second mill levy, which is for road and bridge. The current mill levy for road and bridge is 0.0657. The ceiling is 0.0658. Now that's a rate change of 0.0001, basically 0.2% of a change. That currently brings in, the current rate brings in $4.3 million. The estimated revenue for 25 at the maximum ceiling rate would be $4.4 million. So that would be an additional income for the Road and Bridge Fund of approximately almost $99,000 or 2%. Then also, the commission sets the mill levy for some of our outside agencies. So mental health, you'll see that their current mill rate is 0.0808. The ceiling rate for them is 0.0809. So that's a rate change of 0.0001, basically a 0.1% increase. You'll see the difference there between 24 revenue and estimated 25 revenues. And so that would give to the mental health fund approximately $119,872, which is basically a 2% increase. The development disabilities mill levy currently is 0.0969. The ceiling would be 0.097. Again, that's an increase of 0.0001, 0.1% increase. And so for that operations, that would see an increase in revenue of $142,424. It's important to note that the increase in revenue is factored in not only with the ceiling rate of the mill, but also the increase in new construction, the assessed valuation. So both of those things together is what's generating the additional revenue. And then our senior services, there really is no increase in that. That's 0.0403. It stays basically the same. Rounding and mathematical, there's a slight increase from them if you carry it out a little farther, basically $56,448. So that is the actual ceiling rate that could be established by the commission for all these various mill levy rates. The next chart, which is kind of how we have presented it to the commission in prior years of having your discussion about what you would like to do with the mill levy rate. And we're basically focusing on the general fund rate. So the maximum mill rate, as we said, could be 0.0252. So it's a rate change of 0.0002, 1%. And you see there that would increase the revenue by approximately $49,000. If, however, the commission wanted to keep the mill rate the same, we did not increase it, and left it at 0.0250, you'll see then the county would still see additional revenue, and again, driven by the increase in assessed valuation because of new construction, we'd see an additional revenue of $35,000. If you wanted to make revenue neutral, right? So you wanted to have the revenue coming in to remain the same in 25 as in 24, which again, that's about $1.63 million. Then you would reduce the mill levy by 0.0005, or basically it would be a 2% reduction in the mill levy. And then we go on and give you all sorts of other options if you wanted to continue to reduce the mill levy, and you see to the far right in red what that would do to the revenue stream for the general fund, going all the way down to zeroing out the mill levy, which would then be a reduction of $1.6 million in revenue. So I'm going to go on through the slides, and then we'll come back probably to this one because this will generate the discussion on, and we need some direction from you this evening on what you would like to do with the mill levy because it must come back to you next week for adoption.
Could we, I notice there's some commissioners that have questions.
Sure,
What
sorry.
I'd like to do if the commission, are they related, or would they be, are they appropriate at this point? Okay, and Commissioner Johnson, are you also of the same line?
Ask anytime you want.
Okay. I thought if there was something that was pertinent to the immediate presentation that you made, but let's go ahead and continue your presentation, and then we'll go to questions and comments at your conclusion then. Please
Sure.
proceed.
And actually, I just have really one more slide, which is to say, by statute, it must be adopted by October 1st. So therefore, we would be scheduling the public hearing, which has been advertised already for next week. And of course, we always advertise to the maximum ceiling rate. And so that's the maximum the rates could go. And certainly, if your desire tonight is for us to bring forward direction and by ordinance to lower it, then that, we've met our obligation. And so next week would also be the consideration of the ordinance establishing all the mill levies, and we have to have it certified by October 1st.
So before we go to questions and comments, what you are looking for from us this evening is a consensus on where we want to be.
Correct.
Okay?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington, you are first up. Hold on a moment. I'm afraid there we are. Magic happens.
Okay, so I'm going to say exactly what I said last year. I'm 100% against raising any of these levies above what they're currently at, but I would like to propose for the general fund rate option that we lower it, and I'm going to throw out there the 0.0200. I hate property taxes. When you buy property, you have the illusion that you own that property outright. But the chilling fact is that, the government has perpetual claim over that property by imposing the taxes. They can come, after all that if you don't pay your property taxes. So I'm against it, and I think we should seriously consider lowering it. So I'm going to throw out there the 0.0200.
And just for clarification, you are talking about so that others looking at this screen where it has additional options, you're talking about under additional options, option 1, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, guys, want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Very
So
good.
that would be a reduction in the mill rate of 20%. And then that would be a reduction in revenue compared to this year of $299,814 for the
Yep.
general.
Yep.
Okay.
Just make
And
sure we're
can-
all looking at the same numbers.
Okay. And then I guess we would need some kind of a breakdown that related to how much it is for, because this is general revenue.
This is just the general mill
So we
levy.
need to
This
know
is
whether
not
roads-
road and bridge, this isn't any of those, this is just the general mill levy.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and like I said, I would like to keep all the others what they're currently at. I don't want to cut any of the, roads and bridges throughout the county are such a huge priority that I would not want to cut any of that funding. And then the mental health and development disability and senior citizens, I don't want to raise it and I don't want to cut it. I just want to keep it what it's currently at. That's my proposal.
If I could.
Yeah, please, go right
add
ahead.
one little comment about road and bridge. I will remind the commission that under road and bridge, we have that obligation of paying the road districts. And as we know, that obligation is a flat mill rate of 0.14 by that agreement. And so not setting it at the ceiling, does take away some revenue because we have to make those obligations, right? And right now, even at the ceiling rate, we're still subsidizing with other funds to make that obligation under that agreement. So just caution you about road and bridge, but it's certainly policy of the commission.
Okay, so what you're saying, just to repeat, as I want to keep the conversation going, what you're saying is that if there is that reduction, then the difference in those dollars would be made up out of general revenues or some other source.
Right, so the auditor has run some preliminary numbers, and based on that obligation under those agreements and obligations for the road districts, we anticipate we'd be paying the road districts $4,833,874,000. And if you look at the road and bridge, if you did go to the maximum ceiling rate, you can see that it would generate $4,406,000. So even at the ceiling rate, it doesn't meet our fine. All of that money plus money will be going out to road districts and municipalities.
Okay. Commissioner, do you have any other comments to make?
No, that was it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Johnson, I think you are next. Please proceed.
Two things. First, can you go back to the first slide,
Which slide, I'm sorry?
the very first one? Can you explain to me again that first line, real estate? I know it sounds pretty basic, but
Yeah, it is basically all residential and commercial real estate property.
Okay, what do those last two numbers mean?
Okay, so new construction is basically new construction that was built since last year. And based under Hancock, we are able to take advantage of new construction without being penalized and have to roll back the mill levy. The negative changes due to reassessment, and I might, have to talk to the assessor about that and where that number came from. I don't know if it's tied because of the TIFs, but that is a number that is also part of the adjustment when we look at real estate value.
So the way I read that first line, and I'm guessing I'm wrong on this, but if you take out new construction, our property taxes have gone down.
Probably because the change is the negative 67 million.
Let's say that again.
Because of, to get to the current year of 5.4, you would take the prior year of 5.3 million, you would add the new construction, and then you would reduce the change in reassessment. And that's a negative number, so that brings down the total. So basically that's how you get to the 5.4 for real estate only.
So the way I read this is you took the prior year, 23, subtract that from 24, but that prior year, or that 24 year also includes new construction.
Yes.
So you take that new construction out of that, and you're in a negative. You're negative 67, is that right?
Right.
Which means if you don't count new construction, then people have paid less property taxes, well, I don't believe for a second, paid less property taxes in 24 than in 23.
Well, it depends on the individual, right? Because what we're talking
Certainly
about is
wasn't me, I'll tell you that.
Right. So not everybody's going to pay less, right? In fact, some have gone up. But again, you have to think of this as in the totality of the county of its assessed evaluation.
So there are some people that paid less in 2024 than in 2023?
Well, we haven't done 2024 yet because you haven't set the mill levy and the bills haven't gone out. So those haven't been calculated yet.
But there's a possibility that people will pay less. The
Depends on
assessed
what happened with
valuations
their.
will go down.
It could depend on what happened with their property. But again, remember, this is not a reassessment year. So I'm not exactly, and again, I would probably maybe defer to the assessor with regard to how in a non-reassessment year that some properties had a change due to reassessment. So I don't know if they were appeals. Yeah, thank you.
I can real quickly, this is appeals, so anything that goes to the Board of Equalization or State Tax Commission or paid under protest would be in that amount. So once we certify our total number, we have to track the changes past that. So whenever something is settled through the BOE or the State Tax Commission, that number will be deducted from the total value.
So, thanks, Tracy, but you follow what I was saying, where if you take out new construction, these numbers would show that we're collecting less money in '24 than we did in '23 for real estate taxes.
I don't see that because I didn't put this together. I guess I'm confused by your question there, that less taxes.
Well, we brought in 2023, we brought in $5.3 million, or
Well, no, we didn't, that's not money we brought in. That is the assessed valuation of all the real estate in the
okay, the
county.
assessed valuation
Right.
of real estate.
Yes, just real
This is
estate, not
residential
personal
real
property.
estate.
Residential and commercial.
And so if you take out the new construction, the assessed value of residential real estate has gone down in 2024.
Are you taking it from the 5 point, I haven't done the math. All right, this
Well, you take-
information is
Well, the math is
provided.
right there, isn't it? Isn't that the 144?
The 144 is in the 5.4 as
Right.
new construction.
Right, so you take the
Because we-
144 out of the 5.4, then you have 67,000 less than the previous year.
Right, which has to do with potential, again, appeals that have happened. Or protests.
You'd have to take it out of the previous year too. You'd have to take the new construction out of the previous year, wouldn't you?
No, the new construction is on the difference between 2024 and 2023. So you have the assessed valuation, here's all the properties that their buildings, they totaled 5.3. However, since the last time we did this, to the new assessment that happened this year, there have been new houses built, there have been new commercial built, and that totaled $144 million. So you would basically add that to the $5.3 million to come up with the current. And the reason we have to break out new construction is because Hancock, right? Hancock requires that you can get additional revenue as property values goes up, but it's tied to CPI, but it carves out new construction, because otherwise you would not get the benefit
Right.
of property values for
Yeah.
all the new construction that happens.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to add, the new construction is on non-reassessment years, so whenever there's a non-reassessment year, the only reason a value could change on a property is if there's new construction. So that's why when that certified number of the 5.4 for '24, the new construction won't be added to that until after that certification date, to show that that's the only way that those properties can increase based off of that.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Have any residential properties in the last couple of years gone down in value, assessed value?
Oh, I'm sure they have, yes. Yes, absolutely. I couldn't give you those numbers, but yes, absolutely. Every single year.
But more than the ones that have gone up?
Probably not, without running those numbers, but.
Because that's what this would, to me, this is what that indicates, is that more
Okay,
assessment has gone down.
so from the very beginning, the responsibility of the assessor's office is to follow market value. Without that, without following market value, there's many consequences. We have to follow it based off the State Tax Commission guidelines. We have to stay within 90 to 110% of value. If we fall out of that, we could lose the funding from the State Tax Commission, which is roughly $400,000 to $500,000 that we get. We could lose that funding. And then what's the most important part about an assessor's office is to be the balancing act. If you have an assessor that comes in and puts values at too low, falls out of their compliance, they not only lose their funding, but in turn, as you can see when we're discussing levies, taxing entities will increase those levies to get the amount of money that they were getting the year before. So then when you have an assessor that loses this funding, the state tax commission will instruct that assessor or take over that assessment office, raise their values back up, and do you think any of those taxing entities will lower them levies?
Mr. Assessor, could you speak a little bit more in the microphone? We can hear you up here, but you're speaking to us, and I want to make sure that...
Apologize.
Citizens,
But it's
okay.
a
Just wanna make
balancing
sure everybody
act,
can
and
hear.
that's why the assessment department is so important for every single county in the state of Missouri, is because we help control that levy amount
Yeah,
of
so
those
let me
levies.
ask this. We saw what happened in Jackson County and some of the issues they had. And this is what and you and I have had conversations about my own.
Well, Jackson County, let's, why you brought that up, Jackson County, I can't go into specifics, but, and I don't even know of where the problem started, but what the deal is Jackson County, and what I've understood is they were out of compliance for many years. They hired a company to come in to help them get into compliance with just Tyler Technologies. And I believe, I'm not 100% certain because I have my own county to take care of, but they tried to do it all at once. And when that's a problem. When you have an assessor's office that's not doing their job, lets values fall too far behind, and then when they lose their funding or get pressure from the state tax commission, they have to make that up. And that's exactly what has created this problem for Jackson County. Clay County, I can show you charts after charts and statistics of the last 20 years where we have followed the market. 2011, we actually did decrease most of the properties in Clay County, multiple thousands of properties that were decreased.
Well, how can you have, obviously there's a lot of properties, according to these numbers and according to what you're saying, that have decreased in assessed value, while others at the same time have increased, like, and we talked about mine specifically, 15%.
14.5, but
Okay,
is accurate.
14.5%.
You know, I mean, we're still seeing market values increase. 25 is a reassessment year, so a lot of properties in Clay County could see an increase again.
But how can Clay County, in our county, how can one property be, assessments go up by 14.5%, while another one would drop?
There's
Is the market
properties in
that
Clay
different?
County that have went up over 100% in certain occasions. Let me remind you that I have about 30 staff. I have about 7 field staff that goes out in the field every day, and there's 100,000 properties in Clay County. We do a very good job. We keep up with it, but you can go across the state of Missouri and ask every assessor in the state what their ratio is. I feel, and I believe that's why we're in a better shape than Jackson County, is because we've constantly monitored those ratios. I am confident to say that I believe Clay County is one of the best ratios in the state of Missouri of that. And again, we can discuss this all day long, but it's a magnitude, and there's no easy process. There are things that could help us with that. A certificate of value. I've talked about that in the past. Most people are not interested in a certificate of value, but that would help the assessor's office immensely. I wish the state tax commission would pass that for the state of Missouri, because the lack of data, residential properties are easy. We can get lots of data on residential properties and monitor it. Commercial properties is a little more difficult, and at some point I would like to bring the idea of a certificate of value back to Clay County. It would be a much easier job for me.
Okay, so a couple more questions, actually not for you, Tracy, but thank you so much for the information. One, first, I'd just like to point out for the public, I'm like Commissioner Withington. I don't like property taxes. I think it's immoral, property tax. I have to continue to pay taxes on something that you own over and over again, but that's a different topic. But when you look at the amount of money that we bring in to this body, to the county, you know, people get the property tax bill, and it's a big bill. A fraction of that is what we get. A fraction of that. So what is that, 5 million that was on that page? A little over 5 million? Is that what that was? A little over $5 million? What's that?
Are you talking about the assessed valuation?
Oh, I'm sorry. When you talk about the amount of money that comes into the county, actually go to the third, next.
Yeah, those top two, the general and the road and bridge, are what the county gets for property tax.
Yeah, so when you combine, let's see, so 20, so yeah, you're looking at a little over 5 million, about 6, let's see, 4, 5, about 6 million, right?
Close to 6 million, yes.
The general on the road and bridges, about $6 million we're bringing in. The county, this,
Countywide.
that we're bringing in, which wouldn't even pay for what, maybe a tenth of the sheriff's department. So we're not, when people pay their tax bills or property tax bills, they send it to the county. It's not us that's charging that. Most of it's the school. Probably 90% of it's the school, 80 to 90% of that is going to your local schools, which we don't control. In my case, it goes to Kearney Fire District because I live in the Kearney Fire District area. So that's the second biggest thing is the Kearney Fire District. So when you look at these numbers, they're extremely small, which takes me to Commissioner Withington's point. We could completely eliminate our part of the mill levy. Now, we can go to zero, and most people probably wouldn't feel anything in their property taxes. Probably wouldn't feel much of a change at all in their property taxes because it's such a small amount on your property tax bill that actually comes to the county coffers. I mean, it's minuscule. The problem with going to zero, and I'd love to go to zero, the problem with going to zero, the flip side of that is, it's just like in your family budgeting and investment, you want to diversify your investments a little bit. You don't want to rely on one thing. We rely on 100% on basically sales tax, or not 100%, but close to it, sales tax. And when the economy, goes bad, which we've seen in the past with COVID and so on, and the sales tax goes down, that could destroy a county if that's all we're relying on the sales tax. And we don't have things like the property tax to counterbalance that, the good times and the bad times. So that's my concern with going even lower in the mill levy, although I'd love to eliminate it completely, but just know that we are not diversified when it comes to our income. And we rely pretty much on sales tax.
We do, that's exactly correct.
Which could be a problem for us and was a problem apparently a few years back. So I'll just throw that out there as well, that a reduction in, actually, if you go to the next slide. Was there one more after this one? Yeah, that one. So the reduction that Commissioner Withington was looking at, which one was that? That was a
0.0200. So it would reduce revenues by almost $300,000.
Yeah, so we reduced the revenues by almost $300,000, which would be, what, about $1.50 a household? $1.20? $1.20 a household? I mean, that's what we're talking, how much money we're bringing in. It'd be you save $1.20. No one's going to notice that. $1.20 a person. $1.20 a person, that's right. So, I mean, and maybe some political things, could go either way depending on how you do that. But I just throw that out there so people understand the numbers we're talking about. When it comes to property taxes, we pay a ton in property taxes. We just don't pay it here. We don't pay it to the county. We pay it to a lot of other taxing entities that are in the county that we collect for them. And anybody who's watching, please look at your tax bill, and it outlines where it's going to. It'll say what comes to the county and what goes to all the other different things that you're paying to, and you'll see that the county is very, very minimal. And any change that we do here, and I'm not really stuck on anything, but it's minimal. Like I said, $1.20 a person. To me, that's peanuts, but that's all I have.
Okay. Commissioner Wagner, you are up.
Thank you. So since you got the clicker there.
Yes. Where do you want me to go?
Why don't you go back a couple slides? I do want to address maybe what the answer could be on the real estate issue. I'll take a stab, no guarantees, but based on what I see, and I had to flip my phone horizontally so I could get like all the numbers in there because you can't do it the other way, or at least I couldn't. That change due to reassessment versus the current year 2024 represents about 1.2%. And if you want to go so far as to look at both ends of that equation, maybe 3% tops from the plus to the minus and all that kind of thing. I tend to think that is not representative of residential property, and more likely it is commercial property. And since we like using Jackson County examples, I'll use another one. The Plaza recently got its reassessment because they challenged their current property tax, and I believe that moved by $120+ million. Perhaps others may know the correct number, but we're talking huge orders of magnitude, which we don't necessarily have that equivalent here in Clay County. But I tend to think commercial property owners have both the means and the attorneys to talk about their assessments and reassessments. So I tend to think that is probably why that number is that way. Don't know for sure, and I would look to others, but that would make the most sense to me, and that's what I'll offer for the discussion here. If you go 2 slides forward, I totally agree with our colleague that $1.20 is what you leave in the cushions. No one knows it, no one misses it, but I have to point out, and I probably will when we get into budgeting, is that $1.20 here and $1.20 there, pretty soon you get into real money, right? Real money is about $300,000. When I am expecting, not that I'm hoping, but I am expecting, when we see a budget, we're going to have a lot of numbers placed in there for vacant positions, which I've made my feelings of that known previously about ghostly vacant positions that we put money in, we don't fill them, and then whatever happens after that. So the only way I would ever consider going in a direction where we would go down those additional options is you got to have the changes on the vacancies, because if you don't, then that budget goes out of whack big time. And I tend to think it's a lot of movement with not a lot of return for the county, and for that matter for our residents. And so I tend to think the current mill rate is very fair. If one wants to go to neutral revenue, I might be brought around to that feeling. But as I've noticed, and we've all noticed, things haven't gotten less expensive quite yet. And so I at least want to hold our residents harmless, and I would more defer towards the current mill rate. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Lawson, you are next. Oops, hold on a moment. My fat fingers are still just as fat. There you go.
Thank you. I agree that I think it probably would be better served if we left it as is. Now, in the general fund, I don't mind dropping it to that lower rate. We're not really looking at a huge amount. And it comes down to this. Everybody has to learn to live within their budget. And I think, and I've said this and I'll continue to say it, we're supposed to be so fiscally responsible. I think we have wasted money on a number of things that were frivolous and not needed. That's just my opinion. And we've all been a part of it, so we can't say, ooh, it was her, or ooh, it was him. It was overall. We went ahead and voted on it. I think if we lower that, and we leave everything else as it is, then we learn to live within that budget. And when we come up with these ideas that we come up with, we need to be scrutinizing them more closely. You don't have to have everything, we don't have to have all these studies that we have. I still haven't seen anything on the study that we did for the salaries. And that's going to stick in my craw till the day I die. To me, that was a waste of money. But at any rate, whether it was or wasn't, I just felt like that was a huge amount of money to spend on that when we had roads and bridges, we had all these other things that needed to be done. People could get raises, our staff, our wonderful staff could get a little more money. There were a lot of things that could have gone towards. And it's that way with a lot of things that we do. So I say leave it alone, lower the one down. I think that's a great suggestion. You're not saying zero, you're saying down to this level. And then live within our budget like we expect everybody else to do.
Commissioner Carpenter, you're next.
Thank you. I want to talk about the rates in a moment, but first, just to get back to the what Commissioner Johnson was talking about with the changes due to reassessment, and then Commissioner Wagner touched on it as well. I would love to get, I guess, a little more clarity on if it's possible, and I don't mean this evening, but in terms of actually detailing what that 67 million is, because Commissioner Johnson makes a good point, which is that property values are increasing. This year is not a reassessment year, so nobody's going to have that 14.5% jump that you're describing. That's why the top line number isn't going to jump. And the following year, you're going to see an increase for sure. But I am curious as to why the negative 67 million happened. We have a Board of Equalization here in this county, as all counties do. It performs a very important function. And one of the biggest things it does is hear appeals from commercial property owners. And to Commissioner Wagner's point, they tend to be the best armed when they go into those meetings with lawyers and whatnot. And I guess I would just observe that what we want, of course, is the fairest outcome at all times. And the fairest outcome, of course, means that no one is advantaged over anyone else, including well-financed commercial property owners over everyday residents in their residential property tax obligation. And so I have no idea if that 67 million is justified or not in terms of, because are we saying that's fully from the appeals process with BOE that led to that reduction? So I guess I would just be curious if we could drill down on if there are sort of the biggest chunks that comprise the 67 million. I assume they keep those records at the BOE, but all right, the clerk's office, great, yeah. I just think it would be interesting to know, what accounts for those decreases. Okay, on the mills, I'm inclined to keep them the same. I haven't proposed a lot of new spending during my time here on the commission. I think our biggest increases have been on personnel. Obviously, we've done several across the board COLAs for our employees, which is wonderful, and then even larger increases to the sheriff's office, which was necessary. Look, the market shifted with regard to police officers and deputies. Big believer in markets, and so we didn't really have a choice but to do those increases. And so those have been our biggest increases, and then our second biggest, I think, have been to the Road and Bridge Department. And what I recall is pretty widespread support on the commission for both of those things. Sometimes even more support for those things than I advocated, which was well and good. But the truth is, you got to pay those bills, and it's hard to sort of be in favor of all of the things at once, which is our two most expensive departments, Sheriff's Office, Road and Bridge Department. Doing big increases in spending to our two biggest departments, one office, one department, trying to say it right for our sheriff, to advocate for big spending increases in our two biggest departments, while also advocating for a decrease in revenue. It's hard to make the math on that add up for me. If we're going to talk doing cuts, and I think Commissioner Lawson, you make a perfectly valuable point, which is that we ought to be fiscally responsible. We ought to not waste money. Totally agree. I mentioned the study for the water line earlier. You see some of those study amounts, $115,000 to study the water line. Look, I hear you. But I think what we ought to focus on is identifying those cuts and making the cuts first, and then on the back end, coming back and doing a decrease in revenue. I think to do the decrease in revenue first without actually identifying some cuts we want to make invariably is going to lead to less money for these important departments that we say we want to fund, which is Road and Bridge, Sheriff's Office, COLAs for all of our county employees. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to put us in a position where we can't fund the Sheriff's Office or we can't fund the Road and Bridge Department at levels that we all say we want to do. And so my preference is to leave the mill rates the same. I don't, it's pretty de minimis to do these increases anyway, and I don't think we need to do them. The one I would entertain would be on Road and Bridge, just because, I think getting more money for Road and Bridge specifically would be potentially wise, but if there isn't, an aptitude for doing the increase there, then maybe just holding all of them steady is where I would be. And then lastly, I just agree with Commissioner Johnson, which is, look, property tax bills, especially as assessed valuations have gone up so much over time, it's a big bill. It's the biggest single tax bill that most people pay. But it really isn't our bill. And the $1.20, it's not gonna make a meaningful difference on somebody's property tax assessment that might be $4,000 or $5,000. But it will be a little less money that we can put toward the sheriff's office and to Road and Bridge. And so for that reason, that would be my preference. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I think one of the things I would wonder about is, have we factored in what the impact would be once we have implemented, and I realize it's not going to be immediate, when we implement the senior assessed value freeze, at what point does that start to impact our collections? Because now we're talking about assessments that will be in fact frozen in a significant number of cases. Do we have any idea what the impact is going to be on that?
On our senior tax credit relief program? No,
Yeah.
not at this point in time, we don't.
I was going to say, I asked
But
that
that will come into play
realizing
next
it's
year also.
impossible because we don't know, we have no idea how many. We assume, I think, a substantial percentage will be seeking it, but we really don't know until it happens.
Well, I think we, right now, sort of estimating that probably 30,000 residential parcels might be eligible to be in the program. Now, what that constitutes from a financial impact for the county, we don't know yet.
It matters so much as to what that freeze is based on, the value of that. And seniors, like any other part of our population, you have seniors who are living in modest homes, and you have seniors who are living in a pretty nice home. So it's hard to really get our arms around that until we get a little bit further into the process. But I point that out because that is, while the impact is not predictable, it is predictable to say that there will be an impact. I don't think there's any question about that, and I think we need to be cognizant of that because that is part of the field we see in front of us. Would like to point out that in this commission's history, relatively recently, we have in fact lowered the property tax levy below what Hancock amendments were. I think it was 2 years ago. Was it?
Correct. I mean, the commission has rolled back the general mill levy beyond the requirements of Hancock over the last couple of years.
So I mean, we have a
This year.
we have a history of having done that. Also, if I remember correctly, a couple of years ago, the library district took a vote and they lowered their tax levy because they found that they did not need the same volume. So I guess what I'm saying is the fact that when we talk about whether or not to lower property taxes, it's not new ground to us. We have experience having done that. I think we can draw on some of that experience and evaluate this issue a little bit more, a little more educated eye than many counties, to tell you the truth, because we've kind of been in that position, so we have some experience doing that. Something that Commissioner Carpenter had mentioned, and it's a bit reminiscent of the experiences that he and I share, and that is and I'm not saying we should do this sort of thing necessarily at this level as opposed to the state level, but at the state level during budget discussions there are increasing, decreasing amendments which are then tied together. So if you're going to reduce a part of the budget by $1 million, you have to have a place where it's going to be taken up and vice versa. So you've got to keep the books balanced. While I don't think that's something that is necessarily transferable to this, I think the principle is a sound one, and that is to understand that when we do these things, there will have to be a place where those monies will come from, and we have to be thinking in terms of what those reductions are, even though we're talking about, in the great scheme of things, rather modest amounts of money for the average taxpayer. It is a larger part of what the county runs on, so I think we have to make sure we maintain that balance. And like I say, I would submit that this body has the collective wisdom beyond the average county as far as dealing with this issue. So I feel very comfortable with the fact that we're having this discussion, because while we have some different mindsets and some different opinions here, I think that our experience shows that we can come up with something that is respectful of the taxpayers and their hard-earned money, which we are obviously using, and the needs of the county. So I think we can come to that kind of a decision. The other thing that I would point out is I don't know how many folks here have been to the equalization meetings. They are very interesting and in ways educational. I think we can be proud of the 3 individuals who are on that board. They do take their job seriously. And I think something else that I would like to point out, and that is, Mr. Assessor, you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong on this, but one of the challenges on doing assessments on commercial properties is that sometimes they are in fact relatively unique. So like with my house, it is a 3-bedroom house with a double garage, X number of square feet, and there are a number of like houses in the immediate area. Therefore, when you look at sales comps and that sort of thing, you can start coming up with a relatively accurate idea when you're talking about whether it's a data farm or whatever. We're talking about relatively unique properties that don't lend themselves easily to an evaluation. And I guess finally, the other thing I would say while you're making your way up is, I'm no realtor. I'm not that smart. But as they say, the 3 most important parts of evaluating the house is location, location, location. My house in a different location might be worth more or it might be worth less. So there are a lot of moving parts here, and I don't want to discount the difficulty it is in assessing these properties at a fair and reasonable rate. I think we can always improve, and I think we all strive to do that very thing. But I just wanted to make those comments, and Mr. Assessor, if you could kind of comment on all that.
I just wanted to agree with you, Commissioner, on the commercial properties, and it is a lack of evidence. Every year, we currently are sending out sell information data to commercial properties. The last few years, we send them out to just certain properties that we had less data on. This year, we actually sent them out to every commercial property, hoping we get roughly about 20 to 30% of those back, which helps tremendously, because our biggest task is to make it fair and equitable for all the taxpayers. It's not always the easiest thing to get done, but again, I feel that Clay County has done a tremendous job with it over the years, and we will continue to keep that way. But it is ultimately, there's not singling anybody out or anything like that. It is about fairness and equitable. You pay for what you own, and every dime of that money goes right back into your community.
And I would encourage citizens, when they do feel as though there is an error, obviously we have a multi-step process in place for them to appeal. And I would recommend any citizen to understand what options are open to them when it comes to coming to their government with a disagreement or a grievance or whatever you want to call it. That's what we are here for. And I would like to say that while nobody is perfect, none of us certainly represent themselves as being perfect, but I think when you compare the process and the outcome here in Clay County to some of our neighbors, I think we're looking awfully good. So I think from that point of view, I think we are starting from a good baseline, and that baseline is that we are, I think, doing better than the average county in our vicinity. And that gives us, quite honestly, that because it's run so well, that gives us the option of having the discussion that we are engaging in, which is, should we reduce, should we entertain a reduction below Hancock, or should we not? If this county was not run as well as it is, and the assessment department is not run as well as it is, we would not be having these discussions. We would be having, unfortunately, more serious and substantive that other counties are having. So I think we need to count ourselves fortunate that we have the ability to be able to discuss this in a viable way. That's really a lot of it right there, but I would like to point out that we talked about the schools being obviously the largest recipient of these property taxes, and we are probably one of the smaller ones. But with the schools, it also varies greatly. A school district like North Kansas City School District takes a smaller portion of its revenue, or a larger portion, of their revenue from the local contribution, whereas a a school district like Liberty, they get a larger percentage of their tax revenues from the state. So this is not a one-size-fits-all, and I think it's good to be cognizant of some of the complexities that are presented to us on this. With that, Commissioner Johnson, I believe you were seeking recognition.
So, as our county administrator, you're probably the leading expert on our budget and know our budget better than anybody. And with that said, I want to give you the opportunity. I say opportunity because if you don't want to say anything, because it starts to wade into the political arena here. But if you would like to give your thoughts on and/or recommendations on this, and if you want to say no, you can say no. And tell me in private if you want. It's up to you. But
I've never been shy on giving a
Okay.
recommendation. Do it that and, 10 cents won't probably buy you anything, right? But I used to buy you a cup of coffee. I certainly understand. We understand what our residents are faced, at the grocery store, at the gas station. We're early in the budget process. So having this decision by the commission by next week will certainly allow us to plug in what are the revenues from property tax. As you all know, property tax is not a major revenue stream for the county. But in difficult times, as we all know, the money in the couch sometimes comes into play. My recommendation would be that for the general, that you, at minimum, keep it at the current rate. I would not recommend lowering it. $300,000 of the reduction could be substantial for us. And things that, those are salaries, those are positions. I would recommend on the road and bridge to adopt the maximum. And I say that again only because of our financial obligation on the road districts. So if I go back to this particular slide, again, on road and bridge mill levy at the maximum ceiling brings in $4.4 million. Our obligation to the road districts is $4.8 million. So even if you stayed neutral and kept the mill levy the same, right, that's going to reduce by almost 98,000, almost 100,000. So hitting the ceiling and meeting our obligation, we're still going to have to subsidize that obligation by $427,000. That's going to come out of sales tax. We have no other money coming from the general, right? General sales tax. And if you don't capture that additional allowance because of hitting the ceiling, then you add almost another 100,000. So in essence, by not doing that, we're going to have to subsidize that obligation by $500,000. So from that perspective, I would recommend on the Road and Bridge Fund that you adopt the ceiling. And again, that's a 0.2% increase, going from 0.0657 to 0.0658.
okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Thompson, I'm going to go to Commissioner Withington here since he is the commissioner who has an actual proposal, but I didn't want to leave this part of the discussion until I made sure that you had the opportunity to weigh in if you chose to. No, I'm okay. Okay. With that, Commissioner Withington, you are the one who had a proposal, so I think it's fitting to go back to you now that we've kind of been around the table, and if you would like to address any of the concerns that you heard and to expand on your proposal. You are recognized.
Yeah, so I really don't have anything else to really add. Like I said, I hate property taxes, just like everybody else. I think, like I said, it puts a perpetual, you think you own it, but it puts a perpetual claim on your property from the federal or from the government, so you really never fully own anything, right? So I would be, after listening to everything, I would be open to, if we wanted to raise the roads and bridges to that max, that I would be open to that. But everything else, I think we should keep the same. And I'm going to hold to what I proposed earlier of reducing the general fund to 0.020. I know that you guys say it's only $1.20, but we're giving some incentives to our elderly and everything. And I think, at one time the county had made a promise to the citizens that if they approved a sales tax that we would eventually lower our property tax levies down to zero. We have yet to live by that promise. So I'm going to do my small part to try to live up to that promise and lower it. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to keep my proposal of lowering it to 0.020, the 20% decrease.
So we appear to have two options on the table. One would be the one that has been presented here. The other would be the alternative for Commissioner Withington. We're going to have to start moving towards some sort of a consensus view on this. So perhaps the best way to do it would just be go around the table. Commissioner Withington has expressed his opinion. Obviously, that would be his preference. Let's go ahead and start over here with Commissioner Lawson, and let's just comment on each of those options and then start working towards a consensus. So, Commissioner, if you'd like to make any comments. Oops, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Hold on a moment.
Of course I will.
There you go.
Now, just a quick question for you. So you're saying that on the road and bridge, do it at the .658?
Yeah, the 6.5, like I would be open to that. yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the 0.020 on general,
And then
leave
keep it-
everything else alone?
Yeah.
And raise that would be my agreement. I would want to do that as well.
Okay. Commissioner Wagner, do you have some thoughts you'd like to share?
Oh,
Of course. No, I'll keep it brief. Just a reminder that it was, a decade or so ago when all of the other road districts sued the county. Remember that? And I was on council when we basically said Kansas City will quit doing that. We made an agreement that got part of Brighton built. So that does happen. For that reason, I agree that we need to maximize that road and bridge. I am still of the opinion, though, that although we would love to provide other relief, I don't know how you can when we're already in for another $300,000 or so to keep those road districts whole. We've got a ton of positions that haven't been filled that I expect to show up in a budget, and until something changes on those structural issues that drive this county's budget, I am not going to do anything with $300,000 other than spend it on what I think we're going to end up spending it on. So I'm okay with keeping the current mill rate. I'm okay with keeping the other rates and maximize the road and bridge. That's where I'm at.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson, would you like to share an opinion with us? Let's see. There you go.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I appreciate your opinions on this, Dana, and I value that greatly. However, I'm not in favor of any increases whatsoever, simply because assessed valuations for most will be an increase anyway. So even if it stayed the same, most people are probably going to end up paying more taxes anyway. That's just how assessments work. When we cut taxes, when you cut taxes, the mill levy one year, my property taxes still went up. I still paid more. So the assessed valuation, because for a lot of us, most I think it goes up, those taxes still increase. So I'm definitely not in favor of any increases. I'm fine with everything staying the same as it is. I don't care if we go lower. To me, it doesn't make that big a difference. I'm not as in big a favor of going lower because it doesn't make a big difference to us, to individuals in the community. Like you said, a couple bucks, maybe a year. But that would make, a $300,000 difference to our budget. So I guess I'm more in favor of just keeping the mill rate the same for everything. And I wouldn't fight if the majority wanted to go lower as well, but I think keeping it the same is fine for me. No raises for sure.
Commissioner Johnson, could I get clarification? Does that also include road and bridge?
Yes, road and bridge also.
Commissioner Thompson, would you like to comment?
Thank you.
There you go.
I am in favor for maximizing our road and bridge, keeping the remainder of the mill levies the same,
and reducing the general fund to the proposed by Withington.
I'm sorry, could you say that last part again, please? I didn't catch it.
I'm sorry. I'm in favor of reducing our general levy, our mill levy, for the proposed, as Commissioner Withington has suggested.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Carpenter.
And again, I'm sorry for clarification because I didn't quite hear. So the outside agencies, are you recommending the same?
Keeping them the same.
Okay, but lowered the general as Commissioner Withington and then Road and Bridge, the ceiling. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Very good. So I'm going to take the position of keeping them all the same. It would be my slight preference to raise the road and bridge, but out of a desire to not put Commissioner Johnson in a situation in which we're doing a net increase, which I know you don't want to do. To me, that seems like the safest play is to keep them all the same, and so that's where I'll be.
Administrator, were you tallying those? I must confess I was not.
I was. Yeah, more gray hair coming out. So what I heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, lowering the general fund, because we need to take them individually. So lowering the general fund, I really have a 3-3. I have 3 in favor of lowering it, and I have 3 that are saying keep it the same. On Road and Bridge, I have 4 that say utilize the ceiling, and I have 2 that say keep it the same. And then for all the outside agencies, I have 6 of you saying keep it the same. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. So that being said, because it has to be set at next week's meeting, my thought is we will come forward with resolutions based on this. The general fund, I could go either way. It's going to be a tie, right? So the presiding commissioner, it is right now.
Well, I was just going to suggest.
Your
I mean, I think we could get clarity on it if you wanted to
Please,
wait, Commissioner.
yeah, go right ahead, please. I just want to make sure you get your
No.
mic on.
I mean, in terms of we've got 3 and 3 on the general fund. So my view would just be have you be the tiebreaker, and then that decides it, and we move forward.
How often does that happen? I like the idea of lowering taxes. What occurs to me is if we lower one and we allow the other one to go up, that would offset it. I see the road, the thing that appeals to me about the road and bridge is that it is for a specific use. One of the things that citizens, I think, are certainly sometimes rightly concerned about is government spending the money the way we had intended it to and what we label it. Since we're talking about road and bridges, that money will go to road and bridges. That's the hope. I'm sorry. Yes, Commissioner, did you have something you wanted to add?
Nope.
Okay.
Time to go to the next slide.
Oh, thank you. My thought would be to lower the general and bring the road and bridge up to the top. If we could kind of keep it a revenue neutral thing, that might be a compromise. I mean, it doesn't go up to the top. It doesn't stay revenue neutral, I realize that. But I'm trying to think about how we could do that to keep it relatively.
Which fund are you talking about?
I'm talking about the general and the road and bridge.
So road and bridge, if you want to keep the revenue the same as this year, we could go back in and calculate what that mill rate would be.
No, I meant let the road and bridge go up.
So road and bridge would go to the ceiling.
Right.
Which again would generate about $98,000 additional revenue.
And then.
Still less than what we are going to owe the road districts.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
And then possibly bring some relief to the general fund that would maybe offset that so that we are presenting something that is, we're just allocating money, which we should be doing anyway in the budget process.
So I'm not sure where you stand on the general fund.
I'm not sure either, to tell you the truth.
Can somebody help me on this one?
I'm trying to find the movement, the halfway point.
If you wanted to stay.
Lower the general?
And allow the other to go up to the ceiling.
So if you want to stay revenue neutral, right, in the general fund revenue, you would still be lowering the mill levy. Instead of being at 0.0250, you would lower it to 0.0245. That's reducing the mill levy 2%. And that would have the same amount of revenue in '25 as we are getting in '24.
That's not what he's saying.
No.
No, he's.
That's not what he said?
What he is saying is.
Hold on.
Yeah, please.
Thank you for translating. Hold on.
He's looking at the two, sorry.
There you go.
He's looking at the two in totality, so that if you raise one, you lower the other, so that the net is the same as before. So if you raise road and bridge, then you lower the general fund rate so that the amount is neutral.
So if we're hitting the road and bridge, and that's a $98,000 increase in
Right.
revenue.
So do you have a corresponding drop in the general fund of that amount?
Of $98,000.
Yeah.
So it's going to
Right,
be
thank you.
somewhere
Yes. That's what I'm
between
trying to say.
.0245 and .0200. We'll have to run it. I don't have that.
Yeah, I
It wasn't
couldn't
one of the
calculate-
options.
Not surprisingly, I cannot calculate the numbers in
Yes.
my head.
But I now understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying, thank you very much for the
So
clarification.
why not leave it just at
200. Yeah. Commissioner Johnson, you
Yeah,
want
it's
to-
exactly, I was going to say the same thing that Commissioner Lawson just said. What if we left it the same? Those monies could be moved, can't they, from the general fund to roads and bridges?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
They're going to
So
have to.
this is what we're
because
doing now.
We are going to have to pay
Yeah.
that shortfall of $427,000 after the ceiling to the road and bridge
So
districts.
trying to do an even trade for low and one to raise the other, so the same amount of
Yeah.
the net increases or decreases
Right.
neutral.
Right.
It's just
The most
frivolous.
we can raise the road and bridge, you see there. So it's still a $427,000 shortfall in the road and bridge. We can't raise that mill levy anymore. So you need to move the money from the general fund to the road and bridge to pay
Right,
for that
right.
obligation.
But if we did the plan where we increase roads and bridges to what's been proposed by four, that gives us $98,000 more.
Correct.
But with that same line, if we were to decrease, what was the proposal to decrease?
0.0200.
That'd be less $300,000 for a net just over $200.
Yeah.
Yeah,
loss.
so I'm saying maybe not go down that low with you just
Yeah,
go
you're
down
just
the same.
you're trying to even it out, which to me, it's a waste of time. We even it out anyway behind the scenes when you move the money around. Because we're not bringing enough from that roads and bridges to pay what we need to pay anyway.
I'm sorry, what?
We're not bringing enough in from the roads and bridges levy to pay what we're required
No,
to pay
hitting
anyway.
the ceiling, we are not bringing enough revenue to meet our obligation on the road district
So we're making up for it already, and if we.
out of the general fund.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Back to my point where I think neutral on both, staying the same on both would be the best bet, but that's my opinion.
So we still need Jerry to decide what he wants to do with the general fund.
Yeah,
Okay.
failing the practicality of that, because it seems like that's not really getting any traction. I was trying to somehow figure out how to split the baby here. I have almost never passed up on an opportunity to cut taxes, and I would have to, if given the two alternatives, I would favor Commissioner Withington's thought process of lowering, maybe not as much as he wants to, but certainly I think lowering that rate would be something I could live with and I would be okay with. So,
so,
You're deciding between the two votes.
yep.
yeah.
Oh, we're not, we're talking about consensus. I was trying to marry the two
Well,
together.
I've
I
got
would
a-
have to
I-
come down on the side of Commissioner Withington on this one, I believe.
I have to bring a resolution forward to you next
Yeah.
week. So if your intent is you want to lower the mill levy, then again, to do that, you could do that and lower it to .0245. You are lowering the mill levy by 2%, and that keeps us revenue neutral in the general fund.
So that still doesn't break our tie, though.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
So I think Jerry just said he would support the 0.0200, right?
My thought is this: if the compromise that I was trying to craft here kind of on the fly is not going to go anywhere, then it's not really a compromise, it's just a lot of talk. But like I say, I've voted pretty consistently and I've advocated pretty consistently to lower taxes. That's just how I'm kind of hardwired. And we need to work with that. So if we're talking about a tiebreaker, I would say that I would be in favor of the 0200 option. Since the other option does not seem to be viable and have any support, I would go with that. Now, does everybody pretty much, is everybody still pretty consistent with that? I mean, 4-3 is really not a consensus, it's more of just a close vote. Commissioner Johnson, you wanted to say something? Oh, darn. I'm sorry, my screen's got some things kind of close together, it happens.
Yeah, I was confused by what you said. You said there wasn't very much support for the other option. There's 3 and 3.
Right.
So just as much support for either.
I mean, there's not a clear cut. There's not a clear cut, it is very much one or the other, so it's a very close vote. So there's a majority, but it's not as solid a consensus as we get on most things. I was hoping for something that was a little bit more of a more than a 4-3 vote, that was just one vote difference.
Okay, but I'm confused. Can I just clarify your position?
Yeah.
You want the increase in the roads and bridges to the max and the decrease in the general fund?
That was what I was talking about as a compromise that got nowhere, so I'm abandoning that position because it got no traction.
Okay, just tell me where you are now then.
I would have to come down on the side of Commissioner Withington's proposal.
Which is what I just said, an increase in roads and bridges and a decrease in the general fund.
But I believe his compromise was, he would be his first preference was lower the revenue in the general fund equal to the increase of the $98,000 in the road and bridge, which we don't have that calculation. We could do that, but the question is, would both sides move to that? Would that be acceptable?
That's just the same thing as keeping the current rates.
Pretty much, yeah.
So I think we're making this too hard. So,
Yeah.
so it was 3-3 to lower it to 0.20. Jerry said he would support that, so now it's 4-3 there. And then how many voted to raise the mill levy for the roads? Was that 4-2?
4-2.
So I think that's consensus, right?
Do you feel as though you have enough consensus there, despite my comments? Do you feel you have the ability to go forward?
So I think Commissioner Wagner is wanting to speak.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, let me put on your microphone. Go ahead.
Thank you. Since it's technically not a vote, since we have no piece of legislation in front of us, I am at least compelled to say, if you want to lower your rate, you can still do the neutral revenue option. Forget about raising the road and bridge, because as it has been pointed out, it all comes back to the same source anyway. But I am compelled to at least point out, you lower that, you're not only lowering your amount by $300,000, you're going to have to find hundreds of thousands more to go fill the bank on the road and bridge fund, and then who knows what else you've got coming. So I will at least throw out there, if you want to lower the rate to show some form of relief, and that's cool, you can go the neutral revenue option route. Otherwise, when everybody starts coming up with, hey, I need to fill more positions, I need more raises, this and that, you have already put yourself in a $300,000 hole, knowing you're going to have to pay that same amount to make road and bridge complete. I have to point that out and just argue that I may not prevail, and I'm okay with that, but at least I am pointing out those numbers, which are going to come back to us in 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
In November.
Okay,
Yeah,
four, so you
pretty
can
soon.
get the Halloween candy sugar high and then come and hear more
We
bad
can't
news.
afford the candy. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, I've said my piece, I'm done, I'm just gonna throw that out, and if no one wants to do it, that's cool, but I at least done my part.
Does anybody else wish to comment further? Okay. Does that pretty much take care of what you need to know at this point, if no one else has further comments?
Yeah, we'll bring it back.
Okay. Before we go on to the next discussion item, have the citizens who had the property tax issue?
Yes, staff was able to reach Mr. Allen. He indicated he would not be here tonight. I think he indicated he expects it to go forward tonight, and he'll find out tomorrow what happens.
So, I mean, we're on discussion items. Administrator, do you have I don't really have a particular preference. We can go ahead and keep doing discussion since you're up there and then come back to it, or we can go right to the,
It's up to the commission.
do you guys have any real preference? I don't really.
We can just do the discussion item and then come back to that.
That seems to make sense to stay on the discussion agenda and then come back and pick up that last one we skipped over. So let's go ahead and do focus area update, and then we will return to 2024-264.
All right, thank you very much. So as the commission recalls, we've strived once a quarter to come back to the commission with regard to your focus areas and kind of give you an update where we are, whether it's been the first quarter, the second quarter, mid-year, through the year, just to kind of provide some additional information on where we are with your goals and your strategies and any initiatives that the departments have been taking. So tonight is an update on our safety and well-being, which again is one of the two major focus areas out of the 5. That has been safety and well-being and infrastructure. So safety and well-being is defined as nurturing safe and secure communities. And within that, there were a couple of strategies that were identified. The first strategy is to improve public safety response and service delivery capabilities. And under that particular strategy, there were 3 goals that were identified by the commission. One was to conduct a needs assessment for the detention facility, the emergency operations, and the courthouse. The second one is to explore consolidated dispatch. And then the third was adding staff to the prosecuting attorney's office. And I would remind those that these goals are anywhere from 2 to 5 years. So some of them have been worked on and some have not been worked on yet. So I'll start with the first goal, which is conducting a needs assessment for the detention facility, the emergency operations center, and the courthouse. As we know, we are one of the fastest growing counties in the state. With growth comes some challenges, especially when it comes to some of our facilities. As we know, based on our population at the last census, we know we're entitled to another judge. At some point in time, the state will be awarding us that judge. So there are some needs that we know are going to happen in the courthouse. Certainly, our detention facility has some challenges with it when we talk about growth and in the future, and how do we also enhance our emergency operations center. So just to give you an update on where we are with those initiatives, we'd identified some initiatives with regard to doing those needs assessment study. One is we've collaborated with the stakeholders. Our staff has met with the sheriff's office and also court staff to talk about what are their needs, what is their vision, what do they think, what are the bottlenecks, what are the challenges, what does growth look like, and put together an RFQ. That RFQ is on the street. It actually closed this week. We received 7 proposals from vendors interested in conducting those needs assessment studies. Now, at this point in time, the evaluation committee is comprised of members from the sheriff's office, from the court staff, and from our facility staff. And again, we just closed those bids and opened them, I think, yesterday. So we'll be coming back to you once that analysis has happened with a recommendation to move forward with the vendor to perform those needs assessment studies and what our options are going forward in the future. The second item that was a goal was adding assistant prosecuting attorneys and support staff. As the commission may recall, in this year's 2024 budget, 2 assistant prosecuting attorney positions were added along with staff support. Those 3 positions were funded in this budget and will continue to be funded in future budgets. And tonight we also have a presentation by the prosecutor's office. I'd like to introduce Grant Kelly. He is with the Child Support Division in the prosecutor's office. I want to take you a little bit of time to talk a little bit about what they do and accomplishments that they've had and sort of some of their performance metrics. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Grant.
Thank you, Commission, for taking the time to listen to me speak a few words. Also, thank you, Ms. Wright, for including me in this presentation. I am an attorney.
Could you speak a little bit more directly into the microphone, please?
That's just about to hit what I was about to say. Not all attorneys are great public speakers. I don't happen to fall into that category, so please bear with me here. But I do thank you. So it is my privilege to share with you some of the accomplishments that we have had out of our division. We have 16 full-time staff that are dedicated to the mission of child support. So what that really means is anything that touches child support, our office is tasked with addressing that. So we create child support orders, we modify orders, and we enforce orders. And A lot of the attention gets directed towards collection, but we serve members of our public in every single capacity that's related to child support. This last fiscal year, we had an average of 4,662 cases that were in our enforcement area. That's administrative enforcement as well as judicial. We had 762 average cases each month in judicial enforcement in either civil contempt or criminal. And we have, here in the state of Missouri, misdemeanors and felonies that are available. We're one of 2 offices in the state that file federally on child support cases. Those are called domestic support obligations. In federal courts, we file here in the Western District of Missouri, but we're the only office in the state that files in all of the other 49 states. I'd like to point out that state collections for child support, they've been decreasing. They've been decreasing for a very long period of time. Last year, the state fiscal year for Missouri, they collected about $550 million. This year was $540. The thing that's interesting is that during that same time period, the Clay County collections actually increased. So I've created a small graph there to indicate some of our performance as compared to our neighbors as well as the nation. So as you can see there, the Clay County Prosecuting Attorney's Office has the highest level of percentage of paying cases in its category in the state of Missouri. So we're a prosecutor's office. We're all county employees. Some of our statistics, though, are compared to the state of Missouri because we do operate as agents of the state under the Division of Social Services, Family Support Division, Child Support Enforcement. So if you look at that Missouri average of collection for cases, that's north of 40%. If you look at, on average, what happens in most prosecuting attorneys' offices, that's a collection of both regional and dedicated PA offices like our own. That number is below 40%. And the collection for dedicated PA offices is close to the Missouri average. Our percentage of paying cases is actually right around 57%. In our category, that's the highest one that you'll see. Our closest competitor and the only other level A office in the Kansas City metro area was 50%. So we're a good 7% above what their performance is. And you only get to, cases are only considered paying when they've made 3 consecutive months of payments. So it takes a little while to get there. So additionally, we've got some performance indicators for how we're doing on judicial enforcement. These are the cases where they're the worst of the worst. We end up having to take them to court. Civil enforcement would be civil contempt for failure to pay child support, and also those misdemeanors and felony child support actions. So if you look at the percentage of paying cases on those matters, it's going to be lower because they are the worst cases that you're going to see. Even under that analysis, Missouri's average is still right around the same as it was, and other averages are going to see pretty similar results. Jackson County, which is actually a B-level PA office, it's different than ours, but theirs is the worst in the state at under 20%, and we're, again, the highest level A office in the state of Missouri with our, I apologize, let me check that. That's 53%. Buchanan County has 33.35%. That's the other level A county here. So additionally, the cost effectiveness. This is a federal performance measure that's provided to us by the Office of Child Support Systems at the federal level. They release federal statistics every year based on previous year's performance. Their 2023 numbers were just released a cost effectiveness is, it's an interesting number to me because it lets you see how much you're collecting versus how much you're spending. So the national average for collections on expenditures is a little over $4, north of that. So Missouri is actually 6th in the nation. We're really good at this in the state of Missouri as far with our cost effectiveness. We're coming in at, I believe it's $6.87. The second spot goes to Mississippi for cost effectiveness. That's $8.51. So they're collecting $8.51 for every dollar that they're spending. By a wide margin, Texas is the best at this. So they're collecting $10.74 for every dollar that they're expending. By this measure, Clay County just blows them all out of the water. So we're collecting $14 for every dollar that we're expending here in the state, in Clay County. And I don't have the numbers to compare that to other offices in the state. Expenditure numbers are confidential and they're recorded by the state. However, other offices don't have access to those. What I can tell you is this is incredible work. I'm very privileged to do this. I'm also incredibly privileged to talk to you about it. The folks in my department would never do this. They do not like to brag. They don't like accolades. They don't like that kind of attention. But the fact of the matter is those 16 individuals, a number of them have been recognized by the state in the last 2 years with awards for their performance. A number of them are, we've had folks that have been doing this for a few months, up to 25 years. This is a thing that it doesn't get a lot of attention. And part of the reason it doesn't is because it works so well. And our numbers they're wonderful. They're outstanding. We're very well respected in the state. But the thing that is truly amazing is that behind each and every one of those cases is a family. It's a family in our community with kids that we're helping. And I'm just incredibly proud to be a part of it, and I know all of our team is as well. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Are there any questions or comments? Commissioner Johnson.
I do.
Yes, thank you, sir, for that presentation. I appreciate it. But could you back up just a couple of slides? I have some questions.
Sure, of course. Which one? Percentage of paying?
How about that one?
Enforcement?
Yeah.
This one?
Right there.
Sure.
Okay, tell me, Clay County says has the highest level of paying cases in this county. What does that mean?
That's a good question, and I'm glad you asked it. So there's various categories for PA enforcement for child support, right? There's A, B, and C. And if you're a PA office, you're one of those three. There's only two level A counties in the state. There's only one level B county in the state, and the rest are level C counties. There's a certain level of discretion that's afforded to level Cs, level Bs, and level As. So level Cs are typically simply enforcement offices. That's what they do. They don't handle the same things that we do. And they don't file cases that create child support orders. They don't modify orders. They don't touch administrative cases. All they do is handle some enforcement in some capacity. So that would be civil contempt. It kind of depends on the jurisdiction, the judges, their preference. Some of them will file criminal cases, but some of them go civil as well. The B-level office, which is Jackson County, they have much more discretion as far as the cases that they take. All of this is compliant with the contract that we have with the state, our cooperative agreement, as the commission is aware. We have one of those every 3 years that we submit. And then the third is our level A office. And we have very little discretion when it comes to the cases that we get. If we get a case and a referral that comes to our office for either enforcement or the creation of a child support order, we almost have to take that particular case. So when you're seeing this level of performance under that particular lens, know that even when other offices have higher levels of discretion, they're still not performing at the same capacity that we are. They often have much larger staffs. They often have much higher budgets. They can recruit better than we can, but they're still doing it at a rate that's not as good as we are. We're really good at this.
So let me ask, when I look at this bar graph, it shows Clay County's at, what's that, about 58%?
It's just north of 57. Yeah.
They collected 58% of the, what do they collect 58% of?
So a case becomes active as far as enforcement goes.
Is this child support? Is this what
This
we're
is
talking about?
all child support. That's all this
So
is.
you've collected 58% of the child support?
I wish it was that simple, but no, it's not. So when a case receives money, any dollar amount, for 3 consecutive months, then that case becomes considered an active paying case. Now, for reasons that I won't go into, many times individuals cannot afford their full child support amount. So the state and the federal government will consider any payment on that case to be dedicated towards moving towards that active enforcement number.
So what's the 42% that we're missing out on?
So when it comes to the amounts that we're missing out on, a bit of that has to do with our ability to locate individuals that have the obligations. If you were to look at, let's say, like a traditional collections docket on, say, a bankruptcy or some other lender who is trying to collect, I believe that they would inform you that receiving collections in that amount or on that percentage is actually a fairly high percentage. And so when we're missing out on cases or when they aren't paying actively, a number of those may just not cross the threshold into an active paying case because they haven't paid 3 months in a row to get up to that particular number. But a number of those other cases that aren't performing may fall into a case where they're about to go into, say, a civil enforcement for contempt, or about to file criminal charges, or they may already be in that category and have an outstanding warrant and not pay.
So let me ask this. In these numbers here that I'm seeing, how do I say this? Obviously, in comparison, the comparison you're showing here, Clay County is doing very well. But in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, why can't we get to 100%? What stops us from getting 100%? And what does the prosecutor's office need to get, obviously maybe not 100, but get higher to raise that purple bar up off the top of that chart right there? What needs to be done, or can it be done?
I can tell you that we're trying to do everything that we can. So our office, and I'm extremely proud to tell you that we've got the full support of our elected to generate ideas to see if there's some new initiatives that we can come up with. A fantastic program that was created by the Commissioner Cheryl Roberts and now Judge O'Hara. The Parenting Court program is a diversion option for folks. Amnesty programs for individuals who have outstanding warrants and want to take advantage of it, to have their warrant recalled for a very reasonable amount so they can get back in the system. Those kinds of things, those are efforts that we're trying to expend that really don't cost the taxpayers too much money, but also are trying to have individuals that do have those obligations that might be scared for one reason or another to re-engage with the system so that we can get them paying on their support. Some individuals that would fall into that category have not taken part in the process of establishing their child support order. They may have a child support order that might be too high. And so
it's not a prosecutor's office issue.
We're doing everything that we can, and we are continuing to make strides to try to do better.
Okay.
And I think part of the reason why I wanted to show you those numbers and illustrate that it's a comparison is that if you were to look at a flat 57% or a 53%, that sounds terrible, right?
Right.
If you see that the number of cases where folks are actually successful at getting those payments to come in, when you compare those efforts to other jurisdictions and and other areas of the state, it's actually tremendous performance. It's tremendous performance with only 16 people, right? 16 people helped to collect $18.9 million last fiscal year. So, I mean, that $14.01 or $14 for every dollar we're expending, that's a lot of money for those cases. It's tremendous. And so I can understand why you would say.
Yeah, no, I think you
"What
answered
can
my
we get
question.
there?"
My concern was, you know, this looks good in comparison, but in my mind, and forgive me if this sounds too curt, but
yeah, let's get there.
I don't care if you compare yourselves to people that are lousy. I want to know why we're not 100%. And if you're telling me, well, we're doing everything we can, it's not, there's other issues besides, hey, the prosecutor's office isn't being aggressive enough, or we don't have the resources or whatever. There's other, and you've mentioned several other things that go into that, which I'm not aware of. That's why I just ask, you know, I don't care how lousy these other, or how much better we're doing than everybody else. What's the best we can potentially do, or can your office potentially do, the prosecutor's office? And is there anything that the commission can do to help you get even better at that? But it sounds like you guys are banging on all cylinders.
If we're not, then we're checking the cylinders and trying to make sure that we can get it next time, right? And I think that's part of the reason why I wanted to show the cost effectiveness as compared to some of these other states like Texas, right? They're really good at it in Texas too. And we spend quite a bit of our time taking a look around and seeing what's working, what's not working, what can we do, how can we improve this process. Those are discussions that we have on a daily basis, generate ideas from our staff and try to implement those.
Yeah. All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Sure.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, and I think you were too humble. I think you did an excellent job with the presentation and the public speaking. I just want to say thank you very much for the work, and please pass along the thanks to the others, the 16 folks working on these cases. I mean, to not only have the highest percentage of payments, but to be doing it at better than 3 times cheaper than the national average seems like a massive success, and so y'all, by definition, doing that much better than other prosecutors' offices across the country must be being innovative and working hard. And I can also tell that you care and have a passion for it, and I respect the heck out of that. So thanks. Please pass along the thanks. And of course, thanks to our prosecutor Thompson for all of his work and for prioritizing this.
I'll be happy to. Thank you very much.
I don't see any further questions on this area, so we'll move on to the next subheading under this discussion. I think there was another area.
Right, so there are 2 strategies in this particular focus area. The second strategy is working in partnership to prevent, respond to, and mitigate unsafe conditions and emergencies with a focus on problem solving. There are 2 goals that were established. One is by the Commission was update the building codes, and the second item is to implement initiatives to address cybersecurity. So with that, I'd like to introduce Director Jones, who will talk about the update to the building codes, followed by Director Shaw, who will give you some information about our cybersecurity.
Kip Jones, Planning Director. So I'm just going to be really quick about the building codes. So currently the county is on the 2012 version of the building codes. Now please keep in mind that is for the unincorporated section of the county. Any project that requires a building permit would have to abide by the building codes. It's very important for safety of especially the new residential structures. So the Building Code Commission has been appointed by the County Commission this year. Staff is currently working on gathering all the information. So our plan is to present that commission with what every jurisdiction within the county is doing, minus Kansas City, with the 2018 building codes, with the hope that we adopt the 2018 building codes and align with the other jurisdictions, including Kearney, Smithville, Liberty. Most of the jurisdictions within Clay County are on those 2018 codes. We are expecting to have that first meeting before the end of the year to present that information to the Building Codes Commission, and then I would expect additional meetings next year, possibly 3 to 4 meetings to discuss, and at some point, we hope before Q3 of next year to present the recommendations of the Building Code Commission to the County Commission next year for adoption. And I would be happy to answer any questions that the commission had.
Are there any questions or comments? You must have done a great job. Thank you.
Kevin Shaw, IT Director. So Clay County has partnered with CISA, which is a part of the Department of Homeland Security, and they identify vulnerabilities in our network. We get weekly updates on this, and we make remedies to our network based off their recommendations. Also, we are members with ISAC, which is Internet Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. They give us industry cyber attack vulnerabilities too that we can address, also can use for our weekly patching. We also have some peer networking groups. We're members of regional RITMA, Regional IT Managers, a portion of MARC, and we're members of the National ISSA, Information Security Systems Association. So we can get some different peer networking and the latest trends that we need to follow up on. Clay County in July partnered with Wiser to provide phishing exercises and training for cybersecurity. We've did phase 1 of this. We're getting ready to roll out phase 2 tomorrow, and that will go through October, which is the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And finally, we've initiated privacy programs in our Recorder of Deeds software. And I'm here for any questions.
Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
And then as final, when we talk about our focus updates, we have key performance indicators that have been identified to sort of measure and say, how are we doing with safety and well-being? And so you'll see the measures here, and this was as of actuals for 12/31 of 23. And so we have several here that belong to the Sheriff's Office, and I know the Sheriff's here in case you have any questions about any of these performance metrics. And then one of our other metrics, when we're also talking about safety, is code violations. And so you see there, the last performance measure is the average number of days to close a code violation. And so we set targets, and this is sort of new for the county. We're really just getting our feet wet when it comes to our performance metrics, setting targets and benchmarking. And so you kind of see the information there. We kind of give it a status. Is it, green because we've met our target or exceeded it? Yellow is we're close to the target. And red is no, we're farther away from our target than we want to be. And those are things that we need to work on. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I know the Sheriff's Office and certainly IT and Prosecutor's Office and certainly planning. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the status of this particular focus area.
Are there any questions or comments? Commissioner Johnson, hold on a moment. Commissioner Johnson showed up first on my monitor.
I just had a question for the sheriff about the transport unit. Tell me about those transports. Why do we have so many of those external inmate transports?
Yeah, so Will Aiken, Sheriff of Clay County, great question. When I even saw that number, I was like, it doesn't surprise me though. And the reason for it is because Clay County has well over 10,000 active warrants, and COVID had a lot to do with that. The issue that we're having is we're having to travel outside of a specific area, like 50, 75 miles, to go get warrants that are picked up primarily, let's just say St. Louis.
Oh, so these are warrant pickups that you guys are warrants that you're going to pick up in another jurisdiction?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
I'm
And so
good
there,
with that.
COVID really put a damper on that because cases weren't being heard and they were just being continued and we had to let people go.
But, yeah, but wouldn't being higher than the benchmark be a good thing?
I guess, to
me, that's a good thing.
That's one way to look at it. Another way is we're so short-staffed that it hurts us.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's normal work.
It all boils down to the staffing issue.
Okay.
And one of the things that I really wanted to highlight is the fact that we have 37 assaults on staff.
I saw that.
And our benchmark is 5.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, 2023, we had a lot of renovation challenges.
Right.
And we were under lock and key for pretty much the entire year.
And that caused a lot of frustration and stuff like that, but we were also extremely short-staffed. And when you have power going out and you had to move inmates, they're getting frustrated.
Are you seeing any reduction in those assaults now that you've gotten some stuff done in the jails?
I don't know what the numbers are now, but the incidents are not coming across my desk as often. And I mean, some of these were pretty brutal. We had one employee who had his face beat in so bad that he had a hairline fracture on his orbital socket and broke his jaw, and he was on light duty for a little over a month.
Wow.
We're talking about urine being thrown on us, feces being thrown on us, and, you know, the number right there for inmate population, we're yellow, but we're floating between 285 and 300 right now. And we still don't have the enough or the right amount of people to actually manage our inmate population. But we're working with federal partners like DMH. I think that's going to be, that was on the consent agenda tonight. That's going to help us out a lot when it comes to the seriously mentally ill. They're actually going to be in our facility. So that's going to help us there. We're not locked down. Renovation is 99.9% complete. We are absolutely operational and everyone's loving it. Inmates, staff, and incidents have gone down.
Yeah. I appreciate all the work that you and your folks do. I like actually that transport number, although it's a lot more work. I'm happy to see you guys going out and picking up warrants.
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to pick up people who need to be held accountable too.
Yeah.
But with the lack of staffing and the distances that we have to travel and the frustrating part of having to go all the way to St. Louis for a bond of $100.
Right.
For me, that's a waste of time.
I agree.
You know, a $300,000, absolutely, let's go.
But what this does kind of back to what I've always said is establishing this culture here in Clay County. It's like, we don't mess around.
No, we
you
don't.
get a warrant, we're going to come after you and we're going to take you to jail. Because so many other counties, you get picked up somewhere else. Yeah, I got a warrant. We ain't going to transport. We're not going to pick them up, let them go. And if we have that reputation, you know what, you get a warrant in Clay County, you're going to go to jail one way or another eventually. And I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to continue that reputation. The problem that I see in the foreseeable future, though, is we're going to continue to bring people here, and the max capacity of our jail, design capacity, is 400. We're floating around 300, lack of staffing, but then we have classification. We can't put homicide inmates along with child molesters. You know, bad things happen. And so when you start breaking it down, we're limited on the design, which was over 40 years ago. Inmate management was extremely different back then, and we're stuck with it. So let's go keep, picking them up. We're gonna run out of room. And I'm not even talking about low-level offenders who are in our facility that we can let go on, electronic monitoring or anything like that, because the ones that we do have in our facility that are considered minimum security have multiple warrants with other jurisdictions. So they're waiting with us until their trial is, or until they're seen in the court, and then we have to hold them for other entities to come do the transport from us, and it's not like we can even let them go. So in the foreseeable future, we're going to have to talk about a new jail.
Tent City worked somewhere before, I heard. That's all I have.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Will, you covered a good number of questions I had, although I will also agree that I am very happy that we are doing this study, and I look forward to whatever action we will take on the jail, even if it costs us money to do it. Because I saw another city that didn't do it, and I'll just leave it right there. So you have a seat, you're fine.
Yeah.
My question is actually most likely for Kip or the administrator concerning the code violations. We see some of those actions from time to time come forward in our mighty three-person board that we sometimes get to sit on some cases, and we hear code violations come up. So just really curious to know, we're 9 months into 2024. Is that red moving to yellow? Is it not because we don't have enough folks? Just like to kind of get a sense of that.
Kip Jones, Planning Director. So I'm glad you asked that, because I haven't run the numbers, but the cases that come across my desk, the number of cases that we are closing and resolving is a massive amount compared to previous years. So I expect that number to go way down. Now, again, I haven't said those numbers. We have a part-time code inspector. Now, our cases are up. He's doing a great job. It's one of the, I know we're doing the comp plan this year.
Right.
I'm very proud of that. But one of the more prouder moments is hearing him speak to these citizens. I call him the citizen whisperer. He is very good at getting these code violations resolved. And so I think, knock on wood, you're going to see that number come way down.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none. Does that conclude our discussion?
Yes, it does.
Very well. And that was the presentation, so you really don't need anything from us as far as commentary goes. Very good. What we'll do now is we will go back to our regular agenda and take up 2024-264. Administrator?
Yes, there's information in your packet regarding this request by the applicant. This has to do with delinquent. It was turned over per our process. The applicant is not appealing the penalties or the interest. What they are asking for is consideration on the cost for the attorney fee. But again, as part of our process, when we get to this stage of pursuing delinquent taxes, that's about all I can add to the story. If you have specific questions about what our process is, how that cost was determined, I would say, our collector could provide information or the assessor could provide information.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Well, the administrator has just led into my question because reading over the materials, the issue just seems to be their issue apparently is that they were not contacted by an attorney and therefore they want those fees waived. So whoever would care to want to answer it, if come on up, Barbara, to explain the role of an attorney in this and for what reason they get paid.
Barbara O'Reilly, collector. They were sent a notice from us on, it's down in here somewhere.
Is that in our packet, by the way?
Yes, it's in your
Thank you.
packet. It's from the Clay County Collector of Revenue, and it was dated March the 29th. We sent it, and it states in there that there will be a lawsuit. There's charges, and per state statute, RSMO 140-74, there is additional costs, attorney fees, and other costs.
So, if I may, so I've seen it. I know it's there. What I want to be able to explain, or if they are watching, an attorney touches that document that gets sent, correct?
Yes.
And that attorney, is that internal to us or outside of our organization?
Outside of our organization.
And so that attorney's office is paid to generate that letter and to send it on our behalf to that individual.
And to file, you see the next forms are the, where it goes to the circuit clerk division.
Mm-hmm.
And they do that.
Because we
And-
assume that that attorney may have to represent us in that court of law, and therefore they are the ones that
And they
touch
have-
this letter.
Right, they have incurred those charges by doing this for us.
Understood. Thank you very much.
And these are actual charges that we have paid them in the process of doing
So,
this.
so the assumption that I'm going to get a letter from an attorney, that is not the case, but the attorney touches what we send to them.
Yes, sir.
And then whatever happens afterwards.
Yes, sir.
Very well. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Johnson, there you go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it looks like in some of the paperwork here, particularly pages 11 and 12, it looks like there's some attorney work there for filing some of those documents.
Yes.
So with that said, and I know Commissioner Lawson wants to talk, but I'm still going to move to approve 2024-264 with a box marked denies.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2024-264 with a box marked denied. Would you like to, does that conclude you for the moment? Okay. Commissioner Lawson?
Well, no, that's okay.
Oh, you don't need, okay. Motion is on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Okay. In that case, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner? Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
That concludes our regular agenda. That brings us to county administrator comments. Administrator?
Just a couple of items. The first is we are getting very close to completing the comp plan update. That's been a sort of a year-long process. As Director Jones mentioned earlier, one of the projects that the planning department has been very involved with and done a great job in leading that. But I want to announce that the preliminary final draft is actually out on the website, again, available to the public. If they would like to make comments on that document, they can do that on the website. If they go to claycountycompass.com, they will see the current final draft of the comp plan and the opportunity to provide any kind of thoughts or comments that they have on it. So we encourage everyone to go out and do that and give us some feedback as we finalize that long process, which has included a lot of public outreach. And then the last item I have is certainly the commission's next meeting is next Thursday, the 26th at 6 o'clock here in the chambers.
Very well. Commissioner Carpenter, do you have any comments under Commissioner comments? Commissioner Thompson? Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Wagner? Commissioner Lawson? Commissioner Withington? All right, somebody's got to say something here. Otherwise, it just seems like such a waste of paper. Go ahead.
Just want to say sorry for not making it last week. I think Commissioner Carpenter told you guys, us Notre Dame fans, were recovering from that biggest upset in our school history. And then Commissioner Johnson decided to chime in with his USC rhetoric. But don't let that loss distract you from the fact that Notre Dame has the all-time win record against USC. So you guys got some catching up to do.
And I have nothing further to add, so we are adjourned. Thank you.